Hi, my name's Steve Owen. I've a 24-year technology background. I worked in Philips Semiconductors, which then became NXP Semiconductors. In the last 9 years or so, I was running the sales and marketing organization over at NXP. And in November 2022, I left NXP and was thinking about what to do next. And then I started getting a few phone calls from some companies, and I've ended up not quite stepping back. So it's really been an interesting shift for me from a sales and marketing background in technology, dealing with pretty much every industry, to working now in technology backgrounds with a few companies, and I'm really excited to be joining Axelera.
Good. So Steve, thank you very much for your time, and it's absolutely great that we can speak with you. So you recently joined Axelera AI as an advisor, and obviously you're a seasoned executive. You've got extensive experience in the high-tech industry. I'm curious, right? So what sparked your interest in the AI sector and that you made the decision to join Axelera as an advisor?
Great question. In the last few years in my previous roles, we started to look at AI, machine learning, and how to use algorithms to help us improve quite a number of different areas. One of them was on the administrative side, but the more interesting areas were in the car, where machine learning helps us with the infrastructure and secure edge, secure IoT. But also we were looking at some things in the sales organization where we were trying to understand how customers interact with us as a technology company and try and build a database that is interactive so that we were able to serve 500 customers or so directly, but 50,000 indirectly online. And that's impossible to do that. You don't have enough people. You need to then somehow do that online, and to interact and to give meaningful answers, you've got to be using AI. So the way you do that is to build up the database of question and answer, and then start using keyword searches, etc. And we built on that. On the technical side, we've been using different things related to microprocessors, which is where then it sparked my interest when I started connecting into people at Axelera, to be able to then take it further than just the processing side, more onto the AI and cloud servers, etc.
Great. So, and then from your perspective, right? So what would be the most compelling opportunities and challenges facing startups like Axelera AI in the solution space today, right? So, and how do you see Axelera positioned?
The biggest challenge for many companies in the AI space is what are you going to focus on first? Because the AI is a pretty generic statement, and there's so many different things that you could focus on. When you look at Axelera focusing on the imaging space, there's a huge market and a huge market potential there. And then there are other opportunities around machine learning, for predictive maintenance programs. The medical space is one that's really an exciting opportunity that sort of goes between the two there. Imaging, so where you look at things around mammography, X-ray scans, and using the images and detecting tumors, to the predictive maintenance for hospitals, as well as robotics and in industrial environments. Predictive maintenance can save millions of dollars when you think about the amount of time saved when a breakdown is predicted way ahead. On the imaging side, the scope is endless on how you use it for identifying in a commercial or retail environment, but also identification. Are these bad players or these good players? And it just goes beyond there. So I think companies like that are really going to have fantastic opportunities, but I think the key is the focus is really extreme. Don't try to be everything to everyone. It's pick your markets, and Axelera is doing that and is concentrating on the imaging.
And if you look at the transition, right? So looking from cloud to edge computing, how do you envision this altering the broader technological landscape?
That's a really interesting point. We've been talking for over 10 years or so about the number of nodes that are going to exist out for IoT. And we're getting there actually. And during the COVID period, there were many more devices connecting at home, in the office, infrastructure around us. What that's meant is that the infrastructure has had to deal with much higher data rates, and data centers can't deal with that. So the only way we're going to be able to do this is to have super powerful data centers that do the number crunching, the computing, but then ship that data back to local environments. And it's on much better processors on the local nodes, on the devices, on those end nodes. Their performance is much higher now. They're able to deal with a lot more of the information. The machine learning is shipped back to them. They do their own AI calculations as well. And you don't have as much of a problem with the latency going backwards and forwards to the data center. You can do much more locally. And then the final key to this is to make sure that you're dealing with the security aspect. So the secure edge computing is where it's going to be really critical, and how to protect all the data that's generated either at the edge or in the cloud, and working together. So it is going to create a shift. There's going to be more and more systems working locally, because that's really where the work's done, and it's more important. Automotive industry in particular can't afford to be shipping information back to a data center. It needs to be local, it needs to be super fast, and you need to recognize a situation and deal with it. Much the same in retail environments, etc.
Yeah. Right, so if we talk about this shift, right, the shift towards edge computing, and then notably as well on the strain, which you touched upon on data centers, companies obviously need to adapt, right? Also in terms of their infrastructure strategies. So ultimately they need to optimize performance and efficiency. How do you think they're going to do that?
The biggest shift is going to be to separate the two spheres, to the data center piece and then the edge compute space. And then as you bring in more and more powerful accelerators, which is where Axelera comes in, the high-end compute platforms alongside AI accelerators in systems will enable devices at the edge to have much more computing power and to be able to manage much more complex computations and deal with use cases that really were not possible some years ago. What that means then is that companies are going to need to work together to produce a system. They're going to need to work together to run the AI models. They're going to need to think about how to build that infrastructure as one, so that it all interacts together. And that's one of the bigger challenges today. Companies tend to run their own infrastructure and their own solutions. And gradually that's starting to shift as people see they need to cooperate a lot more. And I think companies that are startups recognize that, and more companies, the bigger ones, are starting to recognize it and make that shift as well.
So you say it's a shift becoming towards more of the ecosystem, right? Towards working together and then building everything together.
Yeah, if you think about things around the home, and when you're trying to plug in a device because it's allegedly plug and play, and you can't, and there are things happening now. There's a number of consumer companies who've got together with chip companies and created something called Matter. So that means that those companies have that software, and the pluggability is much higher. You can plug and play and run those. And those companies are offering solutions for competitors. Now, the only way that is, it's an ecosystem created for the benefit of consumers. If we look at bigger infrastructure for things around edge computing, secure edge computing, and AI, then those companies have to work together. They have to use models that interact better together. And you're going to have to run off several different types of systems. RISC-V, you're going to have to think about ARM. Axelera is focused on RISC-V, and then there's an ecosystem building around that. But in the end, the AI software needs to be neutral, and it needs to be able to operate in both spheres.
And if you look at trends, right, within the AI and edge compute market, so what does excite you most, Steve? What does that?
It's a big list.
Which is good, right?
Yeah. And again, it comes down to focus. I've a particular interest in the medical space. I'm focused on a few areas where we're looking at women's health. So medical space is one, and it's a fairly broad topic, and I think working in that space and making some advances there Industrial automation is another space, robotics and the improvement in the efficiency in how we utilize factories. There are many what they call dark factories now, where there are fewer people operating in those factories. They operate in the dark, and the system and the machines run, the robotic systems take over, where then you can concentrate on doing other tasks and in much more efficient. So I think industrial applications, medical applications, automotive and mobility is another area where we can save a lot, because if you think about all the traffic jams we have around the world, there's a lot of carbon fuels burned with cars sat going nowhere. If we can build an infrastructure that is completely intertwined from the home to the car to the train, bus, scooter, whatever that may be, and make it much more efficient by having much better data available, then we're going to be saving a lot more, making it a much safer place.
It's about connecting everything.
Yeah. But it's utilizing that connection,
exactly.
and taking advantage of the fact that there is such a big connection of so many systems, and then concentrating on how to make those systems and ecosystems work together and get the maximum efficiency out of it.
Yeah, I love that, right? And I mean, when we talk about ecosystems, you briefly touched upon that. You touched upon RISC-V, right? And also, if we talk about, let's say, open source architectures, maybe. RISC-V is obviously, let's say, sort of influencing the dynamics of the AI semiconductor industry. So what's your take on that?
So I think RISC-V has been refreshing to the industry. It's allowed many startup companies to be able to expand their business much faster. And it's also given consumers and customers an opportunity to look at something in a different way. Alternatives are really important. My experience in bringing products to market is, if you have a unique system, a unique solution that's not available anywhere else, customers do tend to get a little bit concerned about that and wonder. Now, with RISC-V expanding more and more semiconductor companies actually themselves are looking at having dual solutions and expanding in both directions. That means that RISC-V has definitely a big future alongside ARM. And I think companies like Axelera are taking advantage of this growth in opportunity, again, concentrating and focus on RISC-V. But the software can work in both spaces, so that's something that is a real big advantage and will make customers more comfortable. But it also means that it's a great opportunity then for Axelera to bring customers on board. Yeah.
So let's talk about the perception of fragmentation in the market. Do you really see a burgeoning market for AI at the edge, especially compared to cloud-based solutions?
Depends on if you're thinking about pure applications running on software, or you're relating the application to something real world locally. So camera-based systems, imaging-based systems, where Axelera may be concentrating, those are at the edge predominantly. Data will eventually get shipped back to the data center. But a lot of the work will take place at the edge. A lot of the immediate reactions and responses to a camera-based system, whether it's in a security environment or in a retail environment, a lot of that is going on locally and dealing real time with what's going on. So this proliferation of systems at the edge is really important. And what I've seen is companies move more and more to the edge because they realize that their systems are more efficient, more interactive, and they're able to do much faster transactions and interactions using secure edge computing. And the AI aspect is it really speeding that up. Data does go back to the data centers. A lot of work takes place, and you can do a lot of consolidation of information and build the models further and move the machine learning aspects back to the edge. But then there's real AI work taking place in both situations. So I think there's a right place for a cloud-based solution. There's many more applications possible at the edge. And I think that's where a lot of companies, when they focus correctly, are going to see growth in their business.
Let's talk about industries and about different sectors. So which ones do you anticipate will be the most disrupted by AI technologies?
I think what we're starting to see as well is that the imaging space And you can go in several directions. The imaging space is really exciting. It's also a little bit scary at times as well, because you see online that we have the concerns around deep fake imaging, and that needs to be resolved, and that's by design. So companies will be able to help industries and governments with that as a solution, and it's linked in with identification and how to recognize that. The imaging also, when you're looking at it in a commercial environment, but also in identification situations for border crossings, etc. I've just started using in Schiphol here in the Netherlands, where you check in now and they use facial recognition alongside your passport, and actually you're walking all the way to the plane now without using another passport check to get on board the plane. Same happened in America. So that's a real positive thing. A consumer experience is significantly improved because of the AI possibilities with it. In the medical space, the imaging and capture, particularly in the cancer area, if those data centers are capturing a lot of those images in an anonymous fashion to protect patient privacy, you're collecting all that information. Doctors are going to have access to millions of images that will guide them towards that decision. Is this a cancerous tumor, yes or no? And it will really speed up. And I've attended conferences recently where doctors said this is the one space that they're hoping to make the most advances in the near future, because it's going to make their job so much easier and help patients so much faster. That was one of the things that excited me about that space.
It can really make the world a better place, right? I mean, applying it correctly to the correct sectors, it can, help just unnecessary tasks, right? Repetitive tasks. It can all be, automated, and they're just all by using, the proper models, the proper AI in there. There's just a lot to be done there. Yeah. It's really exciting. So, as AI intertwines with daily life, I mean, what kind of applications do you believe will become really ubiquitous?
It's another great question. So I keep coming back to the medical space. What we will see is that the use of AI will expand beyond clinical environments only, out to patients at home, and using data and imaging and recognition and security. So be able to interact with hospitals, with technicians, with doctors, much easier, and to be able to get to diagnostic situations. It's difficult for some patients to make it to the hospital, but also within the hospital environment. So that's going to be changing how we interact within the medical space. I think also in the travel industry and with transportation, mobility, we're going to see many changes as well about image recognition, identification of who you are, rights to access to a service will be dealt with by imaging. I think we're going to see things changing in the payment space. We've gone from using cards to tap and pay. We're using our mobile phone for payment. In some areas now, payment is taking place based on biometrics, whether it's fingerprint, but also imaging, and it's moving much faster. And as we get more comfortable with the fact that the image is genuine, we'll be able to make some steps in there. So payment identification, border crossings is going to see us. So that's going to make a difference in our lives. We're already seeing trials taking place in supermarkets, particularly in the US, but Google and Amazon using shops where you register your biometrics, your image, and you just pick things up and go and walk out. Payment takes place because it's all recognized. So things like that are a little bit strange, but they're happening, and we're getting used to it more and more.
Yeah. And as we look towards a future, with intertwined with AI, are there any closing thoughts on how Axelera AI and similar ventures can really drive meaningful impact in this landscape?
Yeah, I think we touched on a little bit earlier about ecosystems and the burgeoning growth of different applications and different use cases at the edge. I think that as Axelera grows and its focus in the imaging space, but working within ecosystems to utilize the ecosystem to the full, where companies may be doing different things in robotics and the imaging related to that, and just expanding more the focus area of Axelera to work with other companies alongside them in those spaces is going to mean the opportunity for Axelera really expands way beyond what the focus may be today, and we don't know where that will take us. So it can be industrial, it can be medical, it can be commercial environments, security, etc. So, but then you take it into different types of applications because the two are linked, and that ecosystem will take you there. One thing I've learned over the last 15 years or so, working within ecosystems grows your business 3 or 4 times faster than it does when you're trying to create a new market on your own. And I think Axelera recognizes this, and it is heading in that direction rapidly.
It's exciting times ahead, Steve.
Yes, I'm surprised at the pace at which it's picking up now, but we shouldn't really be, because there's always a slow startup to a market taking off, and then it extrapolates. And that, I think we're in that phase now. AI is a buzzword for many people. I think once we get into the real use cases and how we take advantage of it, it's going to be a super growth market over the next years. If you look at companies that are growing and their stock market situation, if you see those companies, it's everybody's excited and paying attention to those companies. And I think that's where most investments are going to come to in the short, medium term, which is fantastic.
It absolutely is. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.